Let's talk about loneliness influencers and why that term is absolute bullshit. Welcome to Character Analysis, the channel where I break down human behavior in dating, internet culture, and dark psychology to help you spot patterns before they become problems. There's a growing trend on social media these days where there are creators, and they're almost exclusively women, prefacing their videos by saying, "Welcome to a night in the life of a woman who is single with no kids and has no friends." And somehow that's been interpreted as a bad thing. The Cut recently did an article on this trend, and they referred to these creators as loneliness creators and their content as loneliness content. Not only is this term total bullshit, but it's completely engendered. Our society has normalized men choosing to be single and child-free and not having many friends. But when a woman makes those same choices, she's either deemed damaged or she's blamed for that lack of perceived connection. If it's not clear, I hated this article. I thought it was reductive, I thought it was offensive, and I thought it completely missed an opportunity to talk about why so many women are choosing to be single. And not just single, but choosing to live on their own, choosing to lead a life of relative solitude, if not total solitude. That's the word I prefer. Not a loneliness influencer, a solitude influencer. Now, there's the obvious reason why more and more women are choosing to stay single and be child-free. That being, they just want to protect their peace and they want to protect their financial security. And it's funny, men make those same choices, nobody has a problem with it. But women make those same choices and oh my God, we need a whole article on how women are lonely. Instead of trying to normalize women not centering men and not centering relationships or having children, they're once again being punished for their choices. Where I feel the article in The Cut really missed the mark is it barely scratched the surface on what might lead women to choose to lead a solitary life. Because while yes, it is a preference, oftentimes it's also a trauma response. I've spoken before about the fact that my mother was diagnosed with cancer when I was 3 years old and she died when I was 7. And in that time, in those 3 or 4 years, my mother's health obviously was the priority, which meant I was often kind of shipped around to relatives' house to be babysat there or just sent to the back den with the TV, which is why I developed such a love for TV and movies. Now, as a result of that, and because that happened during a very formative time in my development, I became very emotionally self-sufficient, maybe hyper self-sufficient. I grew up with being alone being my default. Around the time that I read the article in The Cut, I also saw an update, I believe it was on Threads, from a therapist who said that women who choose to lead a solitary life do so because it gives them a sense of safety. Now, one of the women featured in the Cut's article chose or chooses to lead a life on her own because she had just recently left a very abusive relationship. So for her, choosing solitude is part of her healing process. It's part of her healing journey. And another creator had just come off of a bad breakup, and she had bullying and harassment in her background, in her childhood. The idea of forming connections with people can be terrifying, especially if you've had these kinds of traumas. So I don't like calling women like this, women like me, lonely when what happened to us was not our choice, when there was nothing we could do to avoid the actions that led us to prefer to be alone. While that choice to be alone might have been motivated by trauma, that doesn't mean that the choice to remain alone or remain single or choose a life of solitude, that doesn't mean that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think we just look at it that way when it comes to women because women are conditioned to believe that they should want a relationship, they should want children. So as usual, when a woman strays from the norm, society does what it can to rein them back in. And the funny thing is, women, we're more equipped to be alone. And that's because we've been raised to put everybody else's needs before our own. It's also important to understand loneliness is a very normal human emotion. And just because a woman has moments and maybe they're phases of feeling lonely, that doesn't make her sad. That makes her human. And honestly, it makes her relatable, which explains why this content is becoming so popular. When I would help people write their dating profiles, there was one website, I think it was OkCupid, that had the question, what does your typical Friday night look like? And this question stumped a lot of people because they always felt like they had to make it sound like they had this really robust social life, especially the women. They would say to me, well, typically I come home from work and I'm exhausted, so I just put on a Snuggie and then I binge watch Grey's Anatomy and have a glass of wine. Do you know how many people probably do that? And not just women either. I know that there are men out there in their Snuggies watching something on Netflix. We felt pressured to make it seem like we have all these connections in our lives. And then COVID hit, and there were all these think pieces about how, as humans, we're wired for connection and we have a primal need for connection. Thankfully, we had the internet, we had social media where we could still connect with people. And that's what people don't understand either. Here are these creators, these loneliness creators. Well, they're making content and they're getting hundreds and thousands of followers and people saying how appreciative they are of this content because it makes them feel seen. And the result is they're forming these connections. Feeling lonely is not the same as being a lonely person. Another part of the problem here is social media because social media really it rewards these sort of fixed identities because that makes it easier for the algorithm to recognize who wants to see what kind of content and what content to put in front of which people. There isn't really a lot of nuance when it comes to these algorithms. What I love most about this solitude content is that it's not just women, like, sitting home by themselves, it's women decorating the homes that they own themselves or that they don't share with anybody. It's women taking themselves out on dates. It's women showing other women their morning rituals. It it tells women that they don't have to wait. They don't have to wait for other people to come along in order for them to have a full life. I wish I didn't walk away from that cut article feeling like it was sort of passive aggressively blaming these women for why they led the lives that they led. When what they're really just trying to do is probably regulate their nervous system and heal from things that they never asked to happen to them. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you follow any of these solitude creators? Do you like this type of content? Does it resonate with you, or does it make you feel bad for them? Which, by the way, is okay. It just shows that you're an empathetic person. Leave your thoughts and your feedback in the comments below. Make sure you're following me on Instagram at @thechristanm, TheChristanM, and on TikTok at My Character Analysis, and on YouTube at Character Analysis Pod. And make sure you're subscribed to my Substack so you can be part of the private group chat and the private lives and live streams that I hold over there. CharacterAnalysisPod.substack.com. I'll talk to you soon.